Hello and welcome to our next Catena cast. I'm Claire Bicknell, owner of the Catena Network, the Business Connections Network, and we use these podcasts to introduce our business members to you and get to meet the business owners behind them. So today it feels a bit like I'm out on a school trip. What a beautiful day to be out, and we have come to what could arguably be described as Nottingham's best kept secret. We're at the beautiful Holme Pierrepont Hall, which is the home and business of Robert Brackenbury. So let's go and meet him. Hello Robert, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good, thank you so much for letting us come today. And what a beautiful day to come and visit. But this is not only your home, but it's your business as well.
Yes, but very much they interlink between the two, because part of the business is, in effect, being a home, because that's what it's always been.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for letting us in today to have a look around.
And we'll see what we find.
Brilliant. Wow, this is a lovely cosy room. What is this room, Robert?
Well, these are the medieval lodgings. They've remained almost unaltered since the house was built in 1500, and they have their wonderful timber beams, and they were originally a place for people to keep an eye on the front door, and you can see the real atmosphere of the house, I think, in these particular rooms.
Yes. So it is an Elizabethan building, is it?
Oh, well, we're 1500, so we're a bit before the Elizabethan times. We're late medieval. We're 1490, 1500. We're in the reign of Henry the Seventh, and we're the first brick building in Nottinghamshire.
I was going to say that the brickwork is amazing, but really, really solid. So that's very impressive.
What you notice about the front of the building is that the bricks come in about 2 meters. So as you look at the building from the front, it is very solidly built, and with a 2 meter thick wall. That says a lot about how they went about building this particular house.
Yes. So we mentioned that this is your family home, your ancestral family home. What generation are you?
Well, I think we worked it out that I'm about the 19th generation to have lived in the house.
Goodness.
And it's through my great-grandmother on my mother's side, who was the Pierrepont. So she was Lady Mary Pierrepont, and she was daughter of the 3rd Earl Manvers. And she was my great-grandmother, and that's how the link comes in. So you'll be pleased to know there's a lot of female genes coming in.
Excellent.
Which is no bad thing.
Certainly not. Me too, all that kind of stuff as well. So, but to have had a house like this come to you must be amazing, but also daunting.
Well, to live in a house like this is wonderful. It's you've got lots of space. Your children grow up in a very happy environment. You find interesting features. You are able to enjoy your garden. You're able to develop things like your garden. We've got sheep in the grounds, which are great fun to have. And it also has its daunting moments in that there's an awful lot of roof above our head,
yes,
which you have to keep intact.
Absolutely. I mean, anyone who buys a house suddenly realises what a money pit it is. But I understand that you've recently been able to benefit from some heritage lottery funding.
Well, we've got 2 walls that need badly restoring. The first is between the churchyard and the courtyard garden, and the second is part of the 1628 garden wall on the east garden, and we have been given some lottery funding to repair those walls and to restore them, but also we're getting involved with research and volunteers and education. So as well as the restoration, the lottery funding is enabling a number of other things to happen here, which is essential in the survival of the house.
Yes. So that means this is a home as well as a business for you.
Yeah. It's always been a home, and the way that Charlotte and I wish to take it forward is it's a home as well as a business, and the two intermingle with each other. So when somebody comes to the house, be it for a dinner, a wedding, a drinks reception, they feel as though they're in somebody's house, not a hotel, and we are hosting it for them, and they are dealing with either myself or Charlotte. And I think that makes us very different from a lot of other venues, because that is what this place is all about. It's part
Absolutely,
of the history.
I agree. I was lucky enough to get married here as well, and the warmth and the feeling of it. And two of my friends also got married here, so it brings back some very happy memories for me. So thank you for that. Let's have another explore. So this is again a lovely room. So I'm interested to learn more about your family history. So where did the family start, and who started this house?
Well, the family started actually earlier than the house. So very briefly, the first Pierrepont married Anna de Manvers in 1280, or around 1280, and she was the sixth generation of her family to live here. So that takes us back 6 generations, is possibly to 1100.
Goodness.
And then the house itself was built in 1500, as we said, and it was built by Sir William Pierrepont, who married one of Henry VII's tax collector's daughters. And as we know at that time, tax collectors didn't give back all they collected to the king. So it was quite a shrewd marriage, because he was quite a wealthy man. So he married quite well at that time. And if you look at the room itself, you can see how well built it is. And I've never seen a roof structure like this in any other building, where you've got these beams as thick going lengthways as well as crossways. And that was Sir William Pierrepont showing off his wealth and showing that he could build a building properly, and people who came in here would be impressed, which I have to say, these rooms still have a wow factor today.
I was going to say, certainly, yes. And I think that probably Sir William started off a bit of a family trend, because I believe that the lady, the lovely Charlotte, that you are married to, also has, should we say, some benefit, additional benefit to the house.
It turned out that when I saw her through the kitchen window and thought that's somebody who I might want to marry, she worked in the museum world, and she was at the British Museum and the Museum of London, and she worked in paper conservation. But she has a museum background, for which, as it turned out, is perfect for a house like this, because you have an understanding of A, how the house should look, B, how the contents of the house should be looked after, and C, an understanding of how you use heat and light and everything else. But always at the back of our mind, we have to remember we're living in here, so we can't not have the heating on, and we can't have all the curtains closed all the time. But you are aware there are certain items you want to keep out of the sunshine and out of the light. So she's the perfect one to talk.
Absolutely. I think, yes, perfect credit to your house. The gardens are beautiful, Robert, and it's a perfect day to showcase them. So they look immaculate. Presumably they take a lot of upkeep.
They do. We do have a small dedicated team, and the Heritage Lottery funding we got has enabled us to get a few more volunteers to get involved with the garden. We're a small, tight-knit group, and this garden is really quite important, because it's the first thing everybody sees when they come through the front door, and it's to its original design. There is a bit of debate at the moment as to when we think the garden was designed. For a long time we thought it was 1875, possibly by William Nesfield, who was a famous garden designer at that time. But in the research we're doing to do with the lottery project, we're asking ourselves all sorts of questions. So I may come back in a month or two's time with a different idea as to who may have designed the garden. But it was obviously designed by somebody, because it's a very good design, and wherever you look, it works. So obviously the person who worked on it knew what he was doing, and it originally was a rose garden with bedding out plants in the box parterre. But today we try and keep it flowering for as long as possible even during August, when traditionally gardens have a fallow period, because we want people to be able to enjoy it to the full and it to have a full sort of bloom of colour.
Lovely.
The window we're looking out at the moment is a bow window looking over the garden, and this was in the drawing room, and it was at this window that the lady of the house had her desk. So she, in effect, had the best view of the garden, and the garden was designed on this window so you can look out and see the whole effect of the courtyard.
So, Robert, what a beautiful view out of this window as well. How old were you when you moved to Holme Pierrepont Hall?
I was 5 and my sister was 2. So I've really known it all my life.
Yeah, so lovely.
When my parents first came, it was not as you see it now. And a lot of work, restoration and love and tenderness has gone onto the building.
Yeah, I think we can see that. But you've got some really great pictures here of the hall as when you moved into it.
This particular picture was taken in around 1969. And as you can see, there's rendering on all of the house because in about 1814, the Georgians Georgianized the house and they covered it all in rendering because that was the fashion of the day. And then in about 1973, A, because the rendering was falling off, and B, because it should never have been on in the first place, we started to take the rendering off and we revealed the brickwork which you see today. And the Georgians also brought the park into the side of the house. So the view you're looking at now is the house looking its grandest, and you get the long east side as well as the front, and so it looks much bigger than it really is.
Just looking at the picture of the staircase, that looks a little different from how it is now as well.
We were the house was used by the army during both wars, and remarkably, the house has survived intact. But the staircase has seen better days over time, and this was when we were restoring the staircase and taking all the paintwork off and working out on which parts of the staircase needed to have work done on it. And so that is a picture of a staircase in sort of transition from what we had when we first arrived to what we see today.
Robert, there's a lot of celebration this year, obviously being 100 years since women got the vote, and one of your ancestors was a suffragette, and this is the lady.
Yes, Georgina Brackenbury was a militant suffragette, and she was involved in fighting the cause for the women's vote. She was very active. She was a friend of Mrs. Pankhurst, and her portrait of Mrs. Pankhurst is in the National Portrait Gallery, but she was also a very good artist in her own right, and she did a lot of work on some of my ancestors and a number of other people, and she's actually much better than a lot of other better known artists, and I hope in the years to come that she'll be recognised even more, and that this will bring her name forward, because when you actually look at her art, it is pretty good. Because she was a friend of Mrs. Pankhurst, she knew her quite well, of course, and she was always assisting her in every possible way. And they were known as the Brackenbury Trio. There was Georgina, Maria, and her mother. Her mother was 79. And there was a famous story where in their house in London, one of the two sisters sat in the window at the front of their house looking like Mrs. Pankhurst because they were wearing her clothes. The police came through the door to arrest her. In the meantime, Mrs. Pankhurst went out the back door and escaped the police.
Oh, it's almost like a film, isn't it? Maybe we could do a film of Georgina's life. Yeah. So there's so many stories of your family, and I think we're probably coming to the end of this particular Catena cast at the moment, but I'd love to come back and see if we could do some more parts and look at other areas and seasons of things that go on at the hall here. But have you ever thought about writing a book of the history of Holme Pierrepont? And it strikes me it's got novel written all over it, generations to generations.
Yeah, well, my talents lie in when I take people around the house, because I'm not necessarily probably the best novelist, but I'm quite a good raconteur, though I say it myself, and storyteller. And what I enjoy is taking groups around and informing them of the history of the house and telling them the stories, and then feeding off them. And so there are some groups where we end up having a really good time, because you've got all the people coming round and they're chatting away, you're chatting back, and we're all learning in the process. And that's the great thing about this house. It should and always has been a house full of people, and it's been a house that people are entertained in, and that's why it was built in the first place. So that's how we continue to use it.
Yeah, your ancestors would be delighted with that, I'm sure. Oh, aren't they cute? There's nothing quite that illustrates spring like lambs. They're gorgeous, aren't they? So what breed of sheep are these, Robert?
These are Jacob sheep. We call them the lawnmowers of Old England, and they're not inbred. They're very pure sheep. So if we're to talk about the wool and their meat, spinners love their wool because of the different colours, and they have a very good taste of meat. And when they have lambs, they don't have the problems that other sheep do, because they haven't been inbred or anything. So you find you don't have a lot of problems with lambing whatsoever. So they're a really nice sheep to have, and they're all individuals, and you can tell because they all have different faces and different horns and everything like that. So you do get to know some of them quite well. We did have a sheep once called Mrs. Pear Tree, because she used to sit under the pear tree and wait for all the pears to drop, and as soon as they dropped, she'd eat them. And then there was another one called Serena, and she was one of our first sheep, and we had her literally till she died, because she was so old. So we do love our sheep. And the final one I can remember was Purcell, and the reason that she was called Purcell was because she got stuck down one of the drains here at Holme Pierrepont, and my father foolishly went in after her, because he could have died of asphyxiation because of what's in drains, and she was cleaned with Purcell afterwards, and that's the reason that she was called Purcell.
And what did your father look like afterwards?
I dread to think, because I wasn't around.
He was called Daz, presumably, by then.
Yeah.
Oh, let's leave it on that note. Robert, thank you so much for hosting us today. It's been a bit sort of spring watch, actually, at Holme Pierrepont Hall as well, having a look at the lambs and everything, which is brilliant. We've really enjoyed our time here. Could we come back next season in the summer?
You're very welcome.
That would be brilliant.
And the house looks different again.
I look forward to that. And just as a small gesture of thanks, I'd like to present you with this bottle of Catena wine.
Oh, well, that's very kind.
It is
Thanks
proper
very
wine
much.
and nothing that I've brewed in my garage and just stuck a label on. So I hope you enjoy that, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of months.
I always look at the label, and it's a nice looking label, so I'm sure it'll be a very good bottle of wine.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
You can let me know. Thank you.